Good morning, everyone. We welcome you to the regular meeting of the Board of Trustees for the Utah Transit Authority. Today is Wednesday, February the 10th of 2021, and I'm joined by my colleagues Beth Holbrook and Jeff Acerson. This is an all-electronics meeting with no anchor location. In order to do that, I'll ask Jana Osler if she'll read our electronic board meeting determination. Jana?
Thank you, Chair. This is the electronic board meeting determination statement. Consistent with provisions of the Utah Open and Public Meetings Act, as the Chair of the Board of Trustees of the Utah Transit Authority, I hereby make the following written determinations in support of my decision to hold electronic meetings of the UTA Board without a physical anchor location. Due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, conducting board and board committee meetings with an anchor location presents a substantial risk to health and safety of those who may be present at the anchor location. Federal, state, and local health authorities have adopted guidelines which encourage institutions and individuals to limit in-person interactions and recommend increased virtual interactions. This written determination takes effect on January 27, 2021. and is effective until midnight on February 26, 2021, and may be reissued by future written determinations as deemed appropriate. Dated this 22nd day of January 2021, signed Carlton Christensen.
Thank you, Jana. Would also note to the public that if they'd like to make comment, there is we certainly take those by email, and prior comments have been distributed to the board, or you can register to our WebEx portal, and we'll have a public comment section in a little bit. Today we're saddened to convey the passing of two of our dear employees. UTA has not been devoid of the effects of the COVID pandemic, and we have the passing of two employees, Matt Johnson and David Umpenauer, who, but today we want to honor Matt Johnson, and we'll honor David at our next meeting. And to do that, we've invited Rochelle Frias, who is who's Matt's supervisor, to share some of her own insights and thoughts about Matt. Welcome, Rochelle.
Thank you very much. Matt began working for UTA on February 14th, 2019. During his interview, he was noticeably nervous, but he's very sincere. To the question, why do you want to be a paratransit driver? He answered, because I want to make a difference. Well, that's when we knew that he immediately was the right pick. Not only did he make a difference and an impact in our riders, but to all of his coworkers as well. Training didn't come very easy for Matt, but that didn't stop him. It made him work harder. Matt had determination, drive, help with his trainers. It all led to his great success. Matt always took ownership and embraced feedback as to how he could improve. His trainer, Raphael, saw the difference between Matt and others who struggled through training, but it was obvious that he had drive to succeed, and he wanted it. Matt always came to work with a smile on his face, and he displayed that same smile as he left every day. Even with the mask, you could see the happiness just right through his eyes. He was very humble, sincere, kind, and his passengers loved him. He received several commendations of thanks, and nearly every single one mentioned of how caring he was. He diligently respected and lived by our policies, and for example, one of the ones that stand out was that he wanted to ensure that he followed our no cell phone policy. And he came into work one day and he asked if he could wear his smartphone watch while he was working, but he assured us that he had disabled all of his phone settings and his data settings, which technically turned it into a regular, normal watch. But Matt did love, one thing that Matt really loved was sports. He was always ready to talk sports, especially about BYU and the Utah Jazz. Not a day went by that he had something to say about a game, either the night before or one coming up. And he even took interest in my team, the Minnesota Vikings. So either he would come in and talk about either how they did, his predictions for the next game. He was just such a kind person. Matt was actually one of the only ones that we knew that would actually tailgate in our parking lot. He would be seen with his back door open, sitting on the bumper of his car, and he'd just be eating his lunch. So we had our own tailgater. Matt made just such an impact in our paratransit family. His coworkers consistently asked for updates as his time in the hospital drew on, and his wife, Jenny, she always made sure that we had the updated latest information. As Matt's condition worsened, so many offered support, and in his honor, we wear ribbons with his badge numbers on them, and we tied ribbons inside of each of our buses and drove with the lights on all day. We were very fortunate with technology to stream his funeral and watch in celebration of Matt's life with his family. We just really appreciate, his family keeping us in the loop and knowing that we really cared about Matt. Thank you, Matt, for your dedication, your work. We honor his memory, and Matt will always be a part of our UTA Riverside family. Thank you.
Thank you. What a touching tribute. With that, let's just take a brief moment of silence in honor of Matt Johnson. Thank you. And we certainly extend as a UTA family our condolences to the Johnson family, and know that he had a young one, and certainly our hearts go out to his wife and his child and child-to-be. With that, we'll move on to our next part in our agenda. And with that, we welcome Sheldon Shaw for Safety First Minute. Good morning, Sheldon.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning, trustees. As always, appreciate the opportunity, and what a touching tribute. February is Heart Month, and I wish I could say that's only because of Valentine's Day, and Valentine's Day is Sunday if you're not prepared. But it's also Heart Month because of heart disease. And unfortunately, that takes about 1 in 4 Americans. It's traditionally the leading cause of death. The three key risk factors are if you have high blood pressure, high LDL cholesterol, or if you smoked. And so some of the things that we can do to help ourselves out is have a diet that's low in sodium, cholesterol, and saturated fat. We can exercise, manage our stress, get a good night's sleep. Appreciate the opportunity, Chair.
Thank you, Sheldon. A great message for us today. With that, we'll just public comment. And Jana, do we have anybody from the public that would like to comment?
We do not have anyone who's indicating they'd like to comment, Chair. Thanks.
Okay. Again, we certainly welcome any follow-up comments and through our normal board communication channels, and welcome that. We'll then move to our item number 4 on our agenda, which is the consent, which today just includes minutes from January 27th. With that, I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
I second that.
I have a motion from Beth, seconded by Jeff. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion passes. With that, next we'll welcome Shul Bishop, our Director of Governmental Affairs, for a legislative update and some potential board actions on positions. Shul, good morning.
Morning. Right now, we had some potential action items, but right now they're still in the works. So at this meeting, we're not going to do any action items as far as legislation. We're continuing to monitor, appropriations. There's new bills coming out that our team has continued to work on, and we continue to work with our stakeholders. There is one item that it's not regarding legislation. There's a letter from WFRC regarding creating a safe, family-friendly bicycle backbone network. Hopefully I got that right. It's a letter, it's under the banner of the Utah's Unified Transportation. Just identifies regionally important active transportation projects. And to get your consent on signing that letter from the board.
I think a few of us have probably signed on individually, but I think it would be appropriate for us to take a agency position. Beth, do you want to make a motion to that end, or is that?
Sure, I would love to. I have signed on it individually. You're correct, Mr. Chair. And I believe a motion would be in order to support this WFRC active transportation sign on. I apologize, I didn't know what the language was exactly, but I would support that we sign it as UTA as well.
I'll second that motion.
I have a motion by Beth, seconded by Jeff, to support the letter in our position toward enhancing the active transportation network in our communities and its relationship to transit. So with that, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion passes. Shul, anything else?
No, next board meeting we'll probably have some action items, but right now things are still in the works and not totally official, so we decided not to do that this meeting.
Okay, we shouldn't leave anybody with the opinion that all is silent then.
Oh no, plenty to do.
Yeah, okay. All right. Thanks, Shul, for yours and the rest of the team's effort.
Thanks.
With that, we'll turn to our agency report, and we welcome Carolyn Gannott. Good morning, Carolyn.
Good morning.
I think your camera's up. Oh,
there we go. Yeah, it pops off and on. So I just want to, I have a very short report today. Just want to talk about the Clean Air Challenge. It's once again that time of year, and it's become a fun community competition that makes a big impact on our environment. And we always have a UTA team that does it by each of us who do join through TravelWise. And just by simply eliminating a few vehicle trips each week, we can make a big impact on air quality. And as you know, poor air quality is a significant challenge for Utahns. It affects our health, environment, and the quality of life. The Clean Air Challenge is a month-long competition that gives us a chance to reduce vehicle emissions by choosing alternative transportation methods using TravelWise strategies. So there is a link if you click on for our staff to click on how to join the UTA team, or for others, businesses and organizations who compete against us. But by driving less and driving smarter, we ultimately do improve our air quality, reduce traffic congestion, and conserve energy in Utah. And as a group at UTA, we can already toot our horn, as we could say, a bit as we help Utah be better on the air quality front. And for example, in 2019, UTA emitted, I'm just going to give a little statistics, 865 tons of criteria air pollutants, but saved over 1,900 tons by taking single occupancy vehicles off the road. So this means that UTA brought a net savings of more than 1,000 tons of critical air pollutants along the Wasatch, net savings of more than 1,000 tons of criteria air pollutants along the Wasatch Front. And the average single transit trip on UTA services saves 21.4 grams of those air pollutants. So UTA, we'd love to participate in the Clean Air Challenge, and has been doing this since 2011. And as an agency, we understand the challenge reaches beyond 1 month a year. So the more that we can do and get in the pattern of taking alternative modes as our work for our workforce, the more that we help support that clean air throughout the year. So anyways, we're just letting you know that we're participating, and if the Board of Trustees, any of you want to join in as well, that's great. I mean, the telecommuting this year is actually keeping quite a bit of it down, so which is great. But anyways, we have continued to join the Clean the Air Challenge for this year as well, because the air quality still is better than it was years before, but still not great. So that was just a quick agency report today. There's no other items.
Okay, great. And thanks for the challenge. Knowing Beth and Jeff, they've probably already signed up, so but I'll get there. And my understanding is I can go back and repent a little bit on further action. So thank you. Any questions for Carolyn, however, from the board?
I just wanted to say, Carolyn, I applaud doing this. I think that it is really vital that we continue to be involved in this type of efforts. One of the things that I thought was so notable is that when UDOT did their presentation to the legislature, I think it was a couple weeks ago, they talked about the fact that road usage is at 94% of pre-COVID levels. So basically our roads are being well utilized, and obviously by the majority are single vehicles. And so anything that I think that we can all do to work on this will be valuable in the future. So thank you.
Great. Thank you both, and thanks, Carolyn, for that report. With that, we'll move to financial report for December of 2020. These numbers are obviously preliminary. We're still in the process of our audit and final numbers, but I think it gives a strong direction of where we're going. With that, we welcome Brad Armstrong. Good morning, Brad.
Good morning, Chair and members of the board. My name is Brad Armstrong. I am the Senior Manager of Budget and Financial Analysis here at UTA. As Chairman Christensen mentioned, these are preliminary numbers we'll be discussing today. And the reason they're preliminary for December is because when you close the year end for financial statements, it usually takes several months to go through and close them. Then we also have an annual audit of those numbers. So audited financial numbers come out several months after the end of the year. And so those numbers, the numbers we're talking about here are a snapshot in time from a week or two ago. And those numbers have probably changed since we took this snapshot. But for the most part, they're pretty close to where we're going to end up for the year. I wanted to focus on the year-to-date, so the right side of these numbers for 2020. For the year 2020, we saw sales tax, and this is through November. These are actual sales tax revenues, which lag a little bit from even that. And sales tax revenues came in about 3.7% above budget, what we budgeted for 2020, which is pretty remarkable given the COVID pandemic. I would draw your attention down to the chart down below where we have a red line that shows a 6-month moving average growth rate of sales tax revenue, and the blue line is the 12-month growth rate. And you can see that red line on the far right is above 10%. And if you look back to the left, you can see that is the highest it's ever been from 2014, December 2014 to now. So very vibrant. And you go, and there's a lot of people say, well, how can that be? We're in the middle of this pandemic and we hear about stimulus, we hear about these other things. How is that happening? And I read an interesting study the other day from the University of New Hampshire where they talked about the economic growth of all 50 states in the country. And they said through the third quarter of last year, every state in the country had negative economic growth except for one state, and that was Utah. So we're this little island of economic prosperity, at least so far, in this recessionary environment overall for the country. And good news, and that sort of explains why our sales tax revenue is doing so well. We'll talk some more a little bit later about fare box revenue and our operating expenses, both of which have interesting things going on. I would point out with fare revenue, we came in about 39% below our budget for the year, or about $21 million below what we thought we would receive in fare box. And you can see, moving down the chart a little bit, the primary reason why is our ridership was down about 47%, which of course impacts our fare box. One other thing I'd point out is a big contributor to our cost savings overall has been our diesel price. UTA is the biggest user of diesel in the state, and so if the price of diesel is lower, then our costs are lower. And you can see that our average price for diesel for the year was $1.49 a gallon versus a budget of $2.50. So we did save money there. But I would call attention to two things. Number one, in December, our cost was $1.85 per gallon. And number two, and when we look at the financial markets, we can see that the cost of crude oil has increased by about 25% over the last several months. And so we should expect to see increases in cost for fuel. Next slide, please. So this report shows that passenger revenue situation. So the blue bar on the far right is 55.2. That is what we budgeted for passenger revenues for 2020. And the green bar is what we actually received, which is about $34 million in revenue. And so the net difference is about a $21 million shortfall in terms of our fare box revenue. Next slide, please. Sales tax collection. This goes along with the story of our economic growth. You can see this is growth for 12 months by county in our service area. And our biggest county by far is Salt Lake County. And the growth rate's about 3.5%, which is pretty good. But then we see in the next three largest counties, in Utah, Davis, and Weaver County, we're seeing double-digit growth in sales tax. And a lot of that has to do with household formation, with new homes being built, people moving into those areas, vibrant economies in terms of technology and other areas. So those all contribute to that overall growth in sales tax.
Brad?
Yes.
I attended the Salt Lake County Council, and they had some updates from their fiscal team. But it was interesting to see, while the county as a whole did really well, Salt Lake City in particular, and then a couple others really were down by quite a bit, which almost really reflects our ridership and other, just not commuting into the city, and a lot of the events that the city usually hosts really not being non-existent. So I wonder how much of that is displacement from a normal sort of pattern of life, and how much of it's actual growth. And I guess if you look at it as an aggregate, that's still pretty reflective.
Exactly. I think we talked before that we actually have had sort of a K-shaped recession. We have some areas that have gone up, building and construction and other areas, and then other areas that have had a severe decline in terms of hospitality business, in terms of hotels, restaurants, and the like, and especially in certain sectors where if people aren't going downtown, they're not going to shop, they're not going to go out to eat, and that sort of thing. That's really impacted certain areas. So it's a little bit, it's not good news for everybody. It's really good news from some areas, and it's bad news for others. Next slide, please. So this illustrates that sales tax revenue. Again, on the far right, through November, we've received about $324 million in sales tax revenue versus about $313 million. So it's about $11–12 million positive story for us on the sales tax side of things. Next slide, please. And one of the things that we have received from when we talk about federal stimulus, that whether we're talking about the $2,000 check theoretically that could be coming from individuals, and we have received some help from the CARES Act that was passed last year. And so the red bar on the far right shows that we've lost about $21 million in fare box revenue, but we've also received about $97 million so far of CARES Act funding from the federal government, which helps offset our losses in that area. And next slide, please. One of the things that I wanted to talk about next is about how did we do for the year 2020 in terms of what we budgeted versus how much we spent. And the story generally is that we spent about $30 million less than we budgeted on a preliminary basis 2020. Big parts of it had to do with some of the things we've already discussed. So if we look at the very bottom, we can see the bus green bar down there. It's $5.38 million. And of that $5.38 million, about $5.3 million of that savings was associated with fuel savings. And in commuter rail, $4.55 million, about $3.4 million of that was due to fuel savings. Again, because we've had lower usage of fuel as we've changed our route miles and a much lower price for fuel than we had originally budgeted. On the light rail side, we use electricity for light rail, and so you don't see the savings as much in power consumption, but we've worked less overtime in that area. Let's move on to the next slide, which talks about the key categories of expenses. So we've seen about wage, so this breaks it out in terms of cost categories versus budget. And we can see our wages and benefits were down about $4.6 million versus budget. A big part of that was the light rail that I mentioned. We had, because we've changed our service levels a little bit, we've been very, very fortunate to retain our skilled operated staff. We haven't had to do as much training, so we save money in terms of our training for those areas. And across the board, we've also, in the services area, had about a $5 million savings, with a big portion of that being savings in terms of reduced need for outsourced transit services and reduced microtransit services, because what we do is we have adjusted our services based on the demand for those services. And again, you can see that we saved about $10 million with regard to fuel. We've also, because of efforts of our team to manage our costs, have reduced needs for our parts and warranty, and we have also saved money on utilities, which is associated with changes in service on our light rail line, which we're one of the biggest consumers of electricity in the state as well. And so these are areas that we've done as an agency to manage through this. We've also benefited from lower fuel prices, and we're always looking at ways that we can save costs to manage through these really unpredictable economic times. Any questions you might have, Board Chair?
Any questions from the board? Not seeing any, Brett. Does that conclude your report?
That concludes my report. Thank you very much.
All right. Hey, thank you very much. Certainly encouraging news as we head into this next year. With that, we'll move on to resolutions. And the first item up is a resolution authorizing the handling of funds and the investments and disbursements of monies. And with that, we welcome Bill Green and Emily Diaz. Good morning, Bill.
Good morning, Chair Christensen, board members Acerson and Holbrook. For the record, Bill Green, CFO. We're here this morning to seek your approval for two resolutions, R 2021-0201 and R 21-0202, updating signatories to the management of UTA funds. I would note that there's an amendment in your packets for R 2021-02. This amendment was necessary to have the appropriate number of signatories on the form. We had originally proposed 4 signatories. The state allows 3. Emily will walk you through the presentation now if there's no other questions for me. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, trustees. Like Bill said, I'm here to present you 2 separate resolutions. The first resolution is in regard to the handling of funds, the investment and disbursement of monies. And the resolution would authorize the board chair, the executive director, the chief financial officer, and the chief finance officer's designee. And the resolution would rescind the previous resolution, R 2012-05-01. The second resolution, R 2021-02-02, designates authorized users for Utah's Public Treasurer's Investment Fund, which would be the Chief Financial Officer, Bill Green, Comptroller, Troy Bingham, and Financial Services Administrator, Emily Diaz. And this resolution would rescind R 2018-10-05. And both of these resolutions follow the guidelines of the State Money Management Act, as well as align with the current staffing for Utah Transit Authority. Do you have any questions that I can answer?
Any questions from the board on these resolutions? We'll do each resolution individually, but it made sense to have them explain both. I'm not seeing any questions, so let me go back to the first resolution of R 2021-02-01, and I would entertain a motion on the resolution.
Chair, I make the resolution authorizing the handling of funds and the investment and distribution of monies, the R 2021-02-01.
I'll second the recommendation.
I have a motion by Jeff, seconded by Beth on the resolution. I'll ask for a roll call.
Trustee Holbrook.
Aye.
Trustee Johnson,
Aye.
Chair Christensen.
Aye.
Vote is unanimous. Thank you.
We'll go on to the next resolution, which was explained previously, and I would entertain a motion on that one.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we approve not the public comment, but the resolution.
I think Jana's trying to throw you there, Beth, on purpose.
She is. I'm gonna pull up my own. Just one moment.
You went forward, you went back to slides, Jana. There you go.
Is that it? Okay.
Okay.
Mr.
You'll
Chair,
have to
I'll
get back,
take
Heather. Yeah, there you go.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve R 2021-02-02 with the proposed amendments to the resolution designating authorized users for its Utah Public Treasurer's investment fund accounts.
I second that motion.
I have a motion from Beth, seconded by Jeff on the resolution. I'll ask for the roll call.
Trustee Holbrook,
Aye.
Trustee Acerson,
Aye.
Chair Christensen.
Aye.
The vote is unanimous. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Jana. With that, we'll go to item C on our agenda, which is R 2021-02-03. It's a request to the Utah Department of Transportation to use eminent domain for the acquisition of property necessarily for the Ogden-Weber State Bus Rapid Transit Project at 3195 South Harrison Boulevard in Ogden, Utah. And with that, I welcome Mary Delaretto, Paul Drake, and Tim Merrill. Mary, good morning.
Good morning. Yes, this resolution is regarding a property that is needed for the Ogden-Weber State BRT project, and it's on Harrison Boulevard in Ogden. And Paul Drake, our Director of Real Estate and TOD, is going to present on this item.
All right, thank you, Mary, and thank you, trustees. I'm also joined by Spencer Burgoyne, our Manager of Property Administration, as well as Tim Merrill, our Assistant Attorney General. So they'll be available to answer questions and give further detail. If we could move to the next slide. The property that we're talking about, as Mary mentioned, this is critical for the success of the Ogden-Weber State BRT project. It's located at 3195 Harrison Boulevard in Ogden. It's adjacent to a planned BRT station. It's just under a half an acre and houses a 5,000 square foot retail building. It's estimated to be just over $1.6 million. And the current owner is Edward P. and W.F. Carroll A. Marquez. If you wouldn't mind going to the next slide. Also, as Mary mentioned, this resolution would allow UTA to request eminent domain, or rather request UDOT to exercise its eminent domain authority to acquire this property, and that's critical, and we'll go into that. But this is a context map showing where the property is. As you can see, it's just on the northwest corner of the intersection of Harrison Boulevard and 32nd Street. Also includes that 7-Eleven gas station. Next slide, please. So we've been negotiating amicably with the owner for over a year, but still haven't come to a conclusion. The reason we're bringing this resolution to the board is essentially timing. We're at the point that the property acquisition is threatening the project schedule, and failing to acquire that property soon would cause project delays and perhaps some significant costs. Of course, there's still a possibility that we could conclude our negotiations and resolve this without the need of condemnation. However, at this point, the pace is not promising, and so we need to pursue further options so that we can make sure to keep on that schedule. Next slide, please. So staff recommends and requests that the board approves the resolution and then authorizes the executive director to request that the Utah Department of Transportation commence its eminent domain proceedings. Do you have any questions for us?
One question, which I actually know the answer, but I think for the public's sake, it would be helpful to know of most cities can and other municipal entities can pursue eminent domain, but why do we have to go to the Utah Department of Transportation? I don't know if you or Tim want to answer that, or.
Oh, I could answer it, or Tim, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. I can jump in. So the state legislature has determined that UDOT will exercise eminent domain authority for large public transit districts. However, the statute does permit UTA to essentially operate through delegated power. And so the condemnations which UTA has filed in the past, for example, with UVX, has been in conjunction with UDOT. However, we closely collaborate and work with them, and we aid and assist them in exercising the eminent domain power, which we use only as a last resort.
Sure, sure. Okay. I just thought that would be good to clarify. Any questions, however, from the board on this? I know we've been briefed previously.
Mr. Chair, I don't have questions. I just wanted to comment. I think, as Paul mentioned, the negotiations have been ongoing for some time, and I know it's challenging for all sides, and I wish we had been able to come to a conclusion that would be beneficial for both parties and not go to this extent. But I do understand, as do all the stakeholders in the BRT process, understand that now we are looking at a finite timeline. It does change the dynamics. So,
yeah.
Thank you.
Beth, did you want to make a resolution or motion on the resolution?
Yes, I'd be happy to. Thank you. I'd like to recommend approval for the R 2021-02-03, the resolution requesting the Utah Department of Transportation to use eminent domain for the acquisition of property necessary for the Ogden-Weber State University Bus Rapid Transit Project at 3195 South Harrison Boulevard in Ogden, Utah.
I'll second that motion.
I have a motion from Jeff, motion by Beth, seconded by Jeff on the resolution. I'll ask for a roll call.
Trustee Aitchison?
Aye.
Trustee Holbrook?
Aye.
Chair Christensen?
Aye.
The vote is unanimous. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks, Paul. Our next item up is Resolution 2021-02-04, authorizing execution of Amendment Number 1 to an interlocal cooperation agreement with the Utah Department of Transportation for the Vineyard Frontrunner Station and Northern Utah County Double Tracking Project. With that, we'll go back to Mary. Good morning, Mary.
Good morning again. I have Matt Carter with me as well. He's the project manager over this project for UTA. So back in September of 2020, UTA and UDOT entered into an interlocal agreement regarding the design, construction, and management of the new Frontrunner station in Vineyard and the associated double track that's required to operate that station. So can I have the next slide, please? So as a little background, the legislature appropriated $4 million 2 years ago for the design and construction of the Vineyard Frontrunner station. And as we started designing that, we realized we would need an additional 1.8 miles of double track north of that station to be able to operate properly due to the constraints caused by the implementation of the positive train control systems. So UTA committed to fund the double track portion of that project, which at the time was anticipated to be about $10 million. But now that final design is complete and the contractor was able to give us a cost estimate, and we updated our independent cost estimate, the cost for both the station and the double track has risen a little bit. So this amendment is to address some of those changes. Can I have the next slide, please? So this just gives you a perspective where the station is in Vineyard and the length of double track that's required to operate that station. Can I have the next slide, please?
Mary, can I ask a question on that last slide?
Sure.
the yellow line is just an addition of existing double track, right?
Correct. I should have pointed that out. There is double track all the way up to, from the station all the way up to where that yellow line begins. So this is just the additional double track that's needed. We had always anticipated a station at this location, so we had put the footings in for a station platform, and we had the double track already there for that, in that station area.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next slide, please. So the original agreement between UTA and UDOT defined the roles and responsibilities of how the project would be built and designed. So it was determined that UDOT would be the lead procurement agency. So we followed their procurement process to hire the designer and the construction contractor. And then we agreed that UTA, in conjunction with UDOT, would oversee the design and construction, the inspection and the testing, and as well as the final acceptance for both the station and the double tracking from the contractor. Construction of both the station and the double track are within UTA's right-of-way. It's all within our right-of-way limits. And then final acceptance would not be granted until UTA was comfortable that all system integration, safety testing, and certification have occurred to our satisfaction. And then once it was constructed, UTA would assume ownership, warranty, and any future operating and maintenance costs for that. Next slide. So this amendment that we have before you today would make the following changes to that agreement. It would shift the responsibility to buy all those long lead items that we need from UDOT to UTA, and we have already done that procurement. It was approved in a previous board meeting for that procurement. It also increases our commitment, our funding commitment for the double track by about $6.9 million. I mentioned earlier that after the construction design was complete, the bids came in higher than we had originally estimated. And then it also identifies the need to obtain another $1.68 million to complete the station construction. So that also was based on initial conceptual design. The UDOT had assumed $4 million, but then that price went up as the final design was completed. So in order to keep the project moving forward, we are temporarily committing to cover that $1.68 million, but we're also agreeing to work with UDOT and UTA together to try to find additional funds for that $1.68 million. And if funds are not found by the time the project construction is completed, UTA would cover those costs. But we will work together to try to find that additional funding. I believe that's my last slide. Any questions?
Mary, what's the budget? Obviously that's a sizable additional commitment, but is that something that we've budgeted for, and how does that budget work out?
Yes, we had budgeted, I believe, $19 million for a project. So this is within our budgeted funds for the project.
Okay.
We had budgeted $10 million last year, and as we were getting closer to design, we realized additional funds would be needed. So this year we also budgeted additional funds for 2021. So that would cover both of the additions that we need for our double track, as well as the addition that UDOT needs for the station.
Yeah. Okay. Other questions, however, from the board? Beth? Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mary, I just had a question in terms of what are we at final design? We know that this is the dollar figure. We don't anticipate that there would be any subsequent cost increases of any kind. Could you?
We are at design. I can't say there would never be any more, because during construction there may be some things that you had not were unaware of that could crop up. But we're pretty comfortable with this cost right now, unless there's something that comes up that was unanticipated. So yes, we're pretty comfortable with this cost at this point. The design is complete, and the contractor, UDOT, is getting ready to issue that contract. There are just some issues regarding the Corps of Engineers and wetlands permits that's delaying it a little bit. But as soon as that gets worked out, UDOT will sign that contract and they'll be ready to go.
Okay, and then,
Go ahead, Beth, sorry.
sorry about that. Just wanted to ask one more question. Does that put you off on your timelines? Or does that keep you still within, aside from what you just talked about with the wetlands issues that could potentially cause some delay, are you basically on track for meeting the deadlines?
I think the schedule has shifted a little, and if Matt Carter is available, maybe he could discuss a little bit more about what the anticipated schedule currently is. Matt, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, the current schedule is showing that we would start construction in early April, assuming that UDOT's environmental group gives us the go-ahead to move forward in the next week or so with the 404 permit restrictions. My understanding from the discussions this morning is that UDOT environmental group is meeting with Terry Newell and with the AG's office this week, and should have a response to us hopefully by the end of the week that we can move forward with finalizing that contract and having a start date of early April. That puts us with a finish in later in the year, so we're looking at having a revenue service starting about our December change day of this year of 2021.
Thank you.
Jeff,
Can I just?
a question?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that was the exact question I was going to ask. So Beth beat me to the punch, so it's good.
Okay. Sorry, Carolyn, go ahead.
No, I just want to make a comment on the last bullet on the amendment number 1 on the slide. Is that we don't have the funding that 1.68 we're covering to cover the station construction, but we will really be with UDOT helping trying to find that money. So I don't want to leave it just up to UDOT. We really will be the ones out trying to pursue with UDOT, whether, and they'll support any efforts we're making as well as us supporting any efforts they're able to do and be able to fund that source. So it really is a partnership in terms of trying to be able to cover that construction, and that if there isn't a, if we can't find something, then we'd be back to the board to let you know, because the agreement does note that we would be covering it. If we can't find that additional funding before the close out of the project, we'll be back to the board to let them know and how we'll handle that.
Yes, and I'll just add the presentation doesn't say UTA and UDOT, like Carolyn pointed out, but the agreement does say UTA and UDOT will work together. So that was an oversight. Sorry about that.
Well, it's good clarification. And I know this has been a joint effort pretty much from the start. So other questions or discussions on this item? Seeing none, I'll turn to Jeff. Do you want to make a motion on this resolution?
I'd be happy to, Carlton. I recommend action that resolution authorizing execution of amendment number 1 to an interlocal cooperation agreement with Utah Department of Transportation for the Vineyard Frontrunner Station in Northern Utah County double tracking project, which is resolution R2021-02-04.
Second.
I have a motion from Jeff, seconded by Beth, to approve the resolution. I'll ask for a roll call.
Trustee Acerson?
Aye.
Trustee Holbrook?
Aye.
Chair Christensen?
Aye.
The vote is unanimous. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mary, on that one, and we'll hope that the timelines can hold. It'd be great to see that project move forward. I think with that, that completes resolutions, and that takes us to contract disbursements and grants. And with that, our first item up is a contract on the 2019-2020 terms of participation with First Step House. And with that, we welcome Eddie Cummings and Ryan Taylor. Eddie?
Thank you, Chair. This contract is with First Step House. The contract amount is $234,365. These funds were awarded through UTA's competitive award process as a designated recipient of FTA 5310 funds in Utah's urbanized areas, also known as a UZA. First Step House received funds from Salt Lake West Valley UZA for the purchase of 3 14-passenger non-accessible expansion vans and associated operating funds. The awarded vans will be purchased using the State of Utah Best Value contract. The agreement is for the federal portion of the project. The subrecipient is required to provide the local share. No UTA funding will be used in this agreement. The breakdown of the award is as follows: $115,200 for the purchase of 3 14-passenger non-accessible vans and $119,165 in operating funds. Again, the overall total is $234,365. Any questions on this contract?
So I probably missed it, Eddie. Do we have obligations related to the ongoing maintenance of the vehicles that are purchased under the grant, or does First Step House accept that?
Ryan, do you want?
Sure, that would be First Step House's obligation.
Okay. And I guess, do they have to keep the vans for a certain period of time, or?
Yes, so these are the awards under the Section 10 program to enhance transportation for seniors and people with disabilities that you administers on behalf of FTA. So the federal portion of this, it has the regular lifespan of the vehicle. So it maintains continuous control over that. We get reports on their maintenance, on the utilization, and until the federal lifespan is expended, and then we turn the title over to First Step House at that point. But
Okay.
they are on the hook for all of the maintenance, repairs, et cetera, and keeping it in good condition.
So the title stays in UTA's name until that point?
Correct.
Oh, okay. Okay. I wondered how you sort of control that process then. So, okay. Other questions for Ryan or Eddie? All right. Seeing none, I would entertain a motion on this contract.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we approve the contract, the 2019-2020 terms of participation with First Step House.
I second that motion.
I have a motion from Beth, seconded by Jeff on the contract. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. The next item, I assume, is a similar one, also for 2019-2020 terms of participation for Turn Community Services. Eddie?
Thank you, Chair. This is a similar contract. This contract is with Turn Community Services. Contract amount is $490,979. These funds were awarded through UTA's competitive award process as the designated recipient of FTA 5310 funds in Utah's urbanized areas, also known as a UZA. Turn Community Service received funds from all 3 UZAs in the purchase of replacement and expansion vehicles, tablet computers, and operating expenses. The vans purchased for Turn Community Service will be purchased through RFP from an existing contract UTA has with Lewis Bus Group. This agreement is for the federal portion of the projects. The subrecipient is required to provide the local share, and no UTA funding will be used for this agreement. The breakdown of the award is follows. Salt Lake West Valley UZA $115,200 to purchase 2 14-passenger accessible vans, $280 to purchase tablet computers for those vehicles, and $110,000 in operating expenses. So the total from the Salt Lake West Valley is $225,480. From the Ogden-Layton area, $57,600 to purchase a 14-passenger accessible van, $140 for a tablet computer, and $50,000 in operating expenses. So the total from Ogden-Layton is $107,740. And then from Provo-Orem, $157,339 to purchase 3 14-passenger small cutaway buses and $420 for tablet computers. Total from Provo-Orem is $157,759. The overall total, again, is $490,979. Any questions?
Any questions on this one? Sounds like they use a different vehicle than the other one, but similar arrangement. All right.
Chair Christensen,
Yeah, please, Jeff.
if you'd welcome a motion to approve contract as presented in the meeting materials, I would make that recommendation.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion from Jeff, seconded by Beth, to approve the contract as described. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion passes. I think that lets you off the hook at this point, Eddie. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll go to next item is a change order for our advertising contract extension with R&R Partners, and we welcome Andrea Packer. Andrea, good to see you.
Good morning, Chair, and thank you, trustees, for your time today. This change order will essentially provide a 6-month contract extension to our current advertising agency of record, which is R&R Partners. This extension would extend the contract to June 30th of this year and would allow us for the opportunity to put out a full RFP to procure a new advertising agency of record. The amount included in this proposed extension is about $600,000 with an amount not to exceed $850,000. And this is reflected in the annual approved advertising and marketing budget for this year. So there is no additional budgetary impact. With approval of this contract extension today, we would move forward with the RFP this month and have it completed and a advertising agency of record in place by the June 30th deadline of the extension. And with that, I welcome any questions.
Andrea, with that dollar amount, does that include the actual media buy, or is that just for the agency's time?
That is all inclusive, Mr. Chair. It does include funding to the agency as well as production costs for any campaigns that we do, as well as the actual paid media that we purchase. Okay. It is through the agency.
Okay.
That actually answers my question as well. I wanted to just understand. I know in April we have traditionally done a rather more of an aggressive advertising push. So thank you.
Yes, it includes all costs. They get funneled through the agency as they make those media purchases for us.
So Chair Christensen, I have a question. For Andrea. So we're putting this out to basically see what agency we go forward with after the 6 months. Is R&R part of that process? Are they going to resubmit an application or an RFP to, I assume they are, is that correct?
They have the ability to submit a proposal, yes. So okay. we will do a full open RFP and solicit proposals and go through the process from there.
All right, sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion on this particular change order.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the change order for the advertising contract extension of 6 months to R&R Partners.
Second.
I have a motion from Beth, seconded by Jeff. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Andrea, thank you for your time today. With that, we'll go to our discussion item, and we welcome Alicia Garrett, and she's going to talk about our continuous improvement team report from 2020. Good morning, Alicia.
Good morning, trustees. Thank you for the opportunity to meet with you today. I'm really excited to share some of the highlights and great work of the continuous improvement team from 2020 and share with you the accomplishments of the team, as well as let you know what we've got planned for 2021 a little bit. Next slide, please. Just a reminder, we've got a strong mission statement and a vision statement for UTA continuous improvement team, and it's really about being that resource, helping our employees learn about continuous improvement, helping them apply it to their work, helping them feel like they have the power to make change in their work and make things better for themselves, their peers, and their customers primarily, really focused on improving our customer experience, both internally and externally. And our favorite slogan that we stole from one of the books that we read and study is improving the work is the work. And that comes out of the Own the Gap book. Next slide, please. Just a quick reminder about our structure. So we have a formal corporate continuous improvement department that reports in through the Enterprise Strategy Office. And there are 3 dedicated full-time employees, and supply chain has 1 dedicated full-time employee that also has a dotted line into my team. And then we have our broad UTA continuous improvement team, which is what we'll be focusing on today. So these are employees who volunteer to participate in the team. They dedicate 10.5 months to being on the team, and then they have a aggressive certification that they work through as they're learning and applying the principles. So next slide, please. Here were our team demographics. We had a great team last year. We had 35 team members. We had 28 different departments represented. So we continue to be able to expand our influence across the agency. We have 8 members of those 35 who were promoted or took on a new role in 2020. And so these are really some movers and shakers for the agency. We also were very excited that we welcomed some of our very first bargaining unit team members. We had both operators and mechanics that participated on the team with us in 2020, which was really exciting to see. Next slide, please. We have 4 core goals that we measure with UTA's continuous improvement team. We want to help our continuous improvement team members learn about continuous improvement. But once they learn it, it's really important that they learn how to apply it and that they're using what they're learning in their day-to-day work in supporting themselves, their departments, as well as their customers. We also offer project support, so helping them implement those different projects, whether they're on a small individual scale or maybe a team department scale. And then we also have coaching and mentoring that is provided to help support these team members as they grow and develop. And coaching and mentoring is a great way for people to learn as the coach, as well as an opportunity to support the new members and what they're learning. Next slide, please. This just helps show how we have continued to improve. We do a survey and we let all of our continuous improvement team members actually rate the faculty on how well we are doing on those 4 core areas. So you can see in 2020, we were able to improve our effectiveness in learning. Next slide, please. Also in 2020, we had a stronger response for our ability to help our continuous improvement team members apply. And I just want to pause right here and say that having a group of 35 individuals that we would normally meet with face-to-face in a meeting room, the CI faculty skipped about 3.5 weeks while we figured out a way to pivot. We moved all of these virtual, our internal and our external site tours were also moved virtually. We held all of our lessons and breakout sessions and networking events virtually so that our team members would still be able to grow. So I'm incredibly proud of the work that the CI faculty did, that we were able to improve in each of our areas in a year where we were taking on a new system and a new structure that we'd never had before. We had new team members who weren't familiar with our process, and we said, hey, now we're going virtual. And they were able to do a fabulous job. So we improved in apply. Next slide, please. We saw an increase as well in support for continuous improvement concepts. And next slide, please. The last one, coaching and mentoring, ALST improvements. So really proud of the work and ability that the team has had to be thoughtful and take feedback. That's one of the things we talk about in continuous improvement is PDCA. It stands for plan, do, check, and act. So we roll out a plan, we start implementing it, and then we check and we see how we're doing, and then we adjust and act upon what those results are. So we're continuously improving each year on how we run and implement the continuous improvement team. Next slide, please. This is one of my favorite questions that we ask on the survey from the CI team is how likely is it you would recommend joining the CI team to a friend or colleague? So this is the Net Promoter Score. This is an amazing score. When we saw this year, I was literally giddy. 2018's number was good, 2019 was fabulous, and the fact we were able to improve in such a chaotic year last year, I'm, again, really excited and proud of the team. Next slide, please. So we did have a lot of people working on their certifications. So again, out of those 35 team members, we had 17 people who achieved their advocate certification, which is the first year certification. We had 3 people who achieved their expert certification, and we had 4 people who maintained their faculty certification, and 1 person achieved their faculty. And so a lot of work was done by each of these individuals, and the next couple of slides just show the team members. Next slide, please. Here are all of our advocate recipients. So you can see some wonderful names up there. I won't read them all to you, but these are the 17 individuals that completed their certification, and they did a wonderful job this year. Projects ranged anywhere from individually streamlining and process mapping how they do their work, to fundamentally changing the way that they reached out to their client groups and their customers. We had projects that yielded quality results. We had projects that yielded soft cost savings and being able to repurpose workload, reduce stress and frustration. We also had some projects that saved, $1,500. We had other projects that saved $230,000 and counting. And so really a great range of work that's going to continue. What I'm also excited about, of these individuals that completed their certification in their first year, 15 of the individuals on this list are continuing as experts with us in 2021. So I can't wait to see what they do for us this year. Next slide, please. These are our experts and our faculty. So we had 3 individuals complete their expert certification. The expert has higher requirements. They also have to do work outside of their day-to-day department. So they're also put on cross-functional work. So when we are helping to support project facilitation, project management, broader, larger scale continuous improvement activities in the agency, we're leaning on both our experts and our faculty, as they're required to do both departmental work and cross-functional work. And then there you can see our faculty certification. Usha was the one that achieved, and there's the 4 individuals that maintained their certification. Next slide, please. So again, just a couple of highlights. We supported over 50 continuous improvement projects specific to the UTA CI team. There is continuous improvement that is happening across the agency on a regular basis, and we're trying to get a stronger pulse on how we can track and measure that moving forward, because one of the goals of this structure is that people participate on the team, they learn the skills, and then they go back and they help their teams and departments do it, so that the whole agency starts doing continuous improvements. But there were at least 50 that we had our eyes and hands in last year, and really excited about that. So we were able to improve efficiency, improve service to our customers, improve communication, quality, learning. We had a wonderful time. And the last slide, please. We asked people what their favorite part of being on the team was last year, and this was the Wordle that was created while we were doing a live meeting with the team. So any questions about our continuous improvement team?
Oh, I just want to say kudos, but I don't know what Gemba is.
Oh, Gemba. Yes.
Gemba.
Thank you for pointing that out, Beth. It's a wonderful tool. It actually stands for Going to the Place That the Work Is Done. It's a 2-part class that we teach, and we help people say, if you want to better understand a process, if you want to solve a problem in the process, or you want to learn about the people who do the work, you go to where the work is done, you observe it, you ask questions. What's your frustration? How can we improve this? So it's going to where the work is done, and it's very insightful.
I said a couple of questions. First, on one of the prior slides, I saw that you listed Ken Reese, and I'd heard rumor he was thinking of retiring, and you've somehow forgot to teach that part of the class. They just keep working forever, but
he has had a tremendous impact on the continuous improvement team. He was on the original Lean Champion team with myself and a couple of the others that are on the faculty. Bill Giroux and Eric Callison are both part of the original group as well. But Ken Reese has personally been like my sensei, my mentor for continuous improvement. His impact at this agency is phenomenal. He will leave a legacy behind. We're actually having him be a guest speaker as we kick off the new team for 2021, because he's hanging up his hat. in April, but thank you for pointing him out. He's had tremendous impact and his legacy will live on here.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I'm sure he's reflective of a lot of folks. One question I have in something like this, it's sometimes difficult as they come together as a group to sort of leave behind the sort of the norms of their normal business unit to look to find more universal solutions. How do you get them to sort of disconnect or not somehow feel obligated to defend this group or that group's sort of position in a discussion that's more
That's part of the
traditional?
culture shift. That's a great question, Carlton. Thank you for that. That's part of the culture shift we're actually working towards at UTA. You'll notice it's one of our guiding principles to really create and share best practices. But one of the ways we help people take their guard down and just be curious for that learning is we do both internal and external site tours. So each quarter we highlight a different team or department and we help them hear how that work is accomplished, what they do, what their pain points are. We help them provide feedback on, hey, this is maybe an area where you could make some improvements. It's also a great way for them to create networking and come back to the workspace and say, okay, they just did this for their process. I don't have that process, but those concepts might apply to my work over here. And so really creating a safe environment for them to just learn from one another and get to know the agency better. And we do the same thing. We have external site tours. So we had the opportunity to meet with a company up in Seattle who does a lot of consulting work, who wrote the book Own the Gap, and he highlighted all sorts of different nonprofits, education, government, for-profit, and different tools and concepts there. We also worked with Baptist Memorial Health Clinic in the South, and so helping them see how the work can transcend regardless of what your role is, what your title is. And then it is part of that culture shift in putting on that agency lens, putting on that curiosity lens, and learning and sharing. There's something everybody can learn from one another every day. And I think that's part of the excitement and value in the continuous improvement team, is being able to learn from one another. And we're becoming more and more selective about who joins the team. There's a strong desire for it. We had over 75 people apply to be on the team in 2021, and we just finalized the invites and we kick off February 22nd. And so we will have 35 members on the advocate group, and we will have 16 members on the expert team. And then we'll have 8 faculty. And I'm hoping in 2022, several of those experts will want to continue and be on our faculty to help continue to grow and influence.
That's great. Thank you. Any other great presentation? Any other questions though for Alicia on this item?
I don't have a question. I just want to say how incredibly fantastic you have done in your roles and engaging people. And I've seen the benefits of that, and your presentation just reiterates how truly fabulous you are in this role. And I just want to thank you for that. And thank you for your positiveness and your upbeatness and your willingness to engage. I think that just really is so critical, and you have just done it like with flying colors. So very much kudos to you.
Well, thank you, Beth. It's the whole team. We have amazing people. I couldn't do it alone. So thank you. And thank you, trustees, for your time.
Yep, great. Thank you, Alicia. With that, we would just note that in other business, we have our next meeting is on February the 24th, also at 9 o'clock. We have a closed session to discuss a strategy session to discuss pending or imminent, reasonably imminent litigation, and it's roughly about 10:15. I thought I would give folks about a 10-minute break for those who are part of the closed session, and we would convene that about 10:25 on a different platform, and then come back for final adjournment. With that, I would entertain a motion to go into our closed session.
So moved, Chair.
Second.
I have a motion by Jeff, seconded by Beth, to go into closed session. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion passes. Reminder again that we'll be on a different platform at 10:25. Thank you. for life? Okay. We've returned from our closed session, and with that, that brings us to our adjournment. But before we do that, we just would again acknowledge our fellow employee and friend, Matt Johnson, and from the entire Utah Transit Authority family. We extend our condolences to his family and certainly our best wishes as they get through these challenging days and years to come. And with that, I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
I'll second that.
Motion from Beth, seconded by Jeff. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you, everybody, and thanks to staff for a great meeting.